One, two, three. This is Dr. Alex Avila, and we're back with Love University. I'm an author, psychologist, and expert in love and relationships, and also self-esteem. Every week we talk about how to improve yourself, how to love others, yourself, and a higher power. And we've been fortunate to have a wonderful guest lecturers this summer. We're in our summer session. And every week we bring you something new about how to improve your love and life and power and inner power. And today we have a very special guest, Jonathon Aslay. Jonathon is known as America's midlife dating and relationship coach. He works a lot with women to help them find their love and soulmates. He calls himself a guy spy, which is an interesting term. And he's written books, Understand Men Now, How Men Commit and Why. He's a successful entrepreneur from a graduate from Loyola University. Used to be in insurance. He has two sons, and actually his parents have celebrated a 62 wedding anniversary. Welcome, Jonathon, to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor, Alex.
Yes, it's fantastic. And how did you get from insurance to love? That sounds like an interesting combination there.
Let's cut right to the chase. Well, after turning 40 and going through a divorce in 2005, I found myself back out in the dating world. And there was this thing called internet dating. And I go, oh, great. I can literally punch in exactly what I want in a computer and someone would magically appear. And sure enough, I had met a woman, had a great date, nice person, something wasn't right.
Yes.
A few days later, met another woman, great date, nice person, something wasn't right. Again and again and again. In 1 year, I had over 100 internet dates. And so I found out that the something wasn't right was me. So I wanted to learn about relationships. But what was interesting, Alex, is that I was communicating with so many different women throughout the years, having intense conversations. They would just reach out to me and ask, Jonathon, can you give me some advice about my dating profile? Can you give me some advice about men?
Wow.
And literally within a year, I transformed into becoming a dating relationship.
Amazing. So you didn't get a love relationship, but you got a new career. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, exactly. Unexpected.
That's interesting. Now, you call yourself a guy spy. Now, that sounds like a movie or something. Are you in a movie like that, or what is that?
I'm not. I'm in a movie, but as in a documentary about love and relationships. But guy spy meaning I just, my initial business was based on the premise of helping women understand men and the way they operate, specifically in midlife. Those of us that are after baby making years and before retirement, because vast majority of the population that's single over 45 years old is divorced. And so having gone through, alimony, child support, visitation rights, family court, all those sorts of things, I have a kind of a base and understanding from the emotional perspective of what men are going through. And so women wanted to get some feedback around that. Women are always asking the why questions, which I really respect of them.
Definitely. So you have a very personal experience. You've gone through this yourself. You mentioned divorce. And they said that, in the beginning of a relationship, everyone's laughing. There's a lot of humor. But at the end of the relationship, only the divorce attorneys are laughing. So it's Now, in terms of, I work a lot with introvert and shy men who are sensitive. How about a lady spy? Do you ever help men find their soulmates?
Men, interesting enough, men are more interested in how to meet women versus the deeper question. Women are interested in the deeper question. Men are just like, how can I meet women? So their challenge tends to be centered around confidence. You mentioned shy.
Yes.
So that's not my area of expertise. I know a number of people that help men gain confidence in the meeting process. Yeah. My coaching is a little bit more about the deeper, why do you want to be in a relationship? And really the deeper question is, what's going to make you commit to a fully, blown out partnership? That's the conversations I like to have.
Although there are men that we call the feeling males that, actually are interested in deep relationships as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So there are different kinds of, personality types. Now, you have some very interesting materials. You have very provocative questions. I guess, I don't know, maybe it comes from your business background, but you really kind of catch people's eyes. And one of the questions you ask is, are you ready to give up on love? And you talk about women that apparently are not picking the right guys, and you said some of them are impatient or they lack confidence. So what does that question mean for say, women in this market?
Well, I think, or the way I approached that particular one was basically this idea, do I need someone to love me for me to feel loved? And oftentimes people either give so they can get back, or they need validation from someone else to feel love. And so really, when we give up on this idea that we need love from someone else to feel good and just begin to start a practice of feeling good within yourself, you don't need it from another person.
Uh-huh. Now, it's kind of split. Some research shows exactly what you're saying, that loving yourself first, but other research shows that having a loving mate can actually improve your self-confidence and self-esteem, especially what we call the secure attachment. I think you mentioned that in some of your materials.
Yeah.
So let's say that you're a person that's a little bit anxious or even avoidant in relationships, and you meet a great person that's secure. Can that help you in terms of your personal life?
Well, I think anytime a secure is in a relationship, they hold that space of their own, basically what secure means, and maybe we need to elaborate on this for a second, is I don't need you to feel love, nor do I feel rejected by love.
Yes.
Now, the anxious person, if they're at the far end of anxiousness, in other words, they're at the extreme, they're going to destroy the relationship with the secure. Mm-hmm. In addition, the same with the avoidant person. They're going to destroy the relationship. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to be moving fairly close on feeling secure yourself to be able to truly match up with a secure.
That's a good point. Yes, go ahead.
So sadly, a lot of people are delusional on this concept. And I'm going to speak to the women who are listening to this. I know many women who want to be in relationship, and yet they destroy all their they sabotage their relationships, even though they believe they're emotionally healthy, which is one of the reasons why it's so important to adopt a true self-love policy within yourself, meaning I don't need you for me to feel good.
Right, but then again, you could say I want you. In other words, there could be an interdependence, let's say.
Want is different than a need, though.
Yes.
Wanting something is a healthy place to come. Yes. Needing something from someone usually comes from a lack from within.
That's a good point. So we're talking almost like a psycho-spiritual kind of thing. People that are empty within or filling themselves with something, positive emotions. So it's a delicate dance. Possibly someone that is more secure can help raise the other person, but then they also need to have some sufficiency in themselves. Now, sure. in your purposeful dating, I think you talk about certain steps that people can take, women in this case, to help them find love. And you talk about the relationship assessment, and you talk about past relationships, limiting beliefs. Tell us about that.
So I think it's important to explore one's greatest fear around relationships. And so start with what might be your greatest challenges. So one of the things I do when I work with a client, I ask them to explore what's their greatest fear when entering a relationship. And I also ask, why do they want a relationship? Unless you get to the root of your core why, you're going to be swimming in a sea of uncertainty. When you actually have your why really solidly crystal clear, it's going to help in the process, because then you can avoid going out with the wrong people, basically.
So I want a 501k, 401k, and I want 3 kids. Is that a good?
Well, that's certainly the surface types of things, for sure.
But you're talking about a deeper love or sharing life together and things like that, or maybe creating some meaning in life, which is even a higher perspective.
Well, we as human beings need to feel connected to others. So wanting a relationship isn't an unhealthy thing, to want to be mated, because life is better with company. But life isn't better with the wrong company. Let's be real about that.
Definitely, exactly. And I've written a book, Love Types, which talks about compatibility among the personality types. And many times, we have the dating masquerade where people meet each other based on superficial characteristics and even appearance, and then they find out when the mask comes off, they're not really compatible. And I think you're looking at, from within, what is your true nature, who you really are. And when we talk about limiting beliefs, Jonathan, what are some limiting beliefs that women may have? Let's say they're in their middle years now. What are they saying to themselves that's holding them back from finding love?
I think one of the most predominant limiting beliefs that I hear frequently is men are commitment phobic, men are emotionally unavailable. Those are probably the two, ones that stand out the most. And while there's truth to everything, let's not say that there isn't truth to that. Okay. If that's where your consciousness is, in other words, if your mindset is men are emotionally unavailable, men are commitment phobic, men are narcissists, men are this, men are that, then you will just attract all those people. So it's important to flip that within your mindset is to cut and replace, if you will, with what you want. I want an emotionally healthy man. I want someone who's ready for commitment.
Right.
I want someone, and also recognize how you're going to show up in relationship, because it's not always about the other person. It's about how you plan on showing up as well.
That's a good point. So, Jonathan, there are wonderful men out there, is what you're saying. They're good and wonderful guys.
Here's the thing. I believe most people, both men and women, are good people. They're just bad at the process.
Okay. So you're an optimist in a way.
Well, let's be real for a second. Dating is a relatively new phenomena. Up until about 50 or 100 years ago, there was no such thing as dating. If you wanted to get laid, you had to get married. So, and throughout history, it was, quite a bit different. Dating is a process of vetting. But if you don't know what you're vetting for, or if you're vetting for superficial things, you're going to be destined for failure. So one of the things I do in my coaching, and what I mean by the word vetting is basically you have to ask yourself, is this a good potential life partner?
Yes.
Now, let me just say this. You have to want a life partner. There are many people out there right now, I'd say the vast majority, that are happy having what I call companionship relationships,
right,
which are basically relationships where they spend time together. They're monogamous in sex, but that's about as far as it goes. My whole philosophy is centered around partnership, centered around teamwork, centered around investing in one another. And so if you want that, then you have to approach the process a different way. If you just want companionship and exclusive sex, then you approach it cavalierly and you take your chances.
That makes sense. Now, you also talk about, I think, My Perfect Guy, and we're talking about the compatible person, but you also call it the wonderful weird me. So you're looking at what makes you a catch. So let's say a woman's out there trying to meet men, and is she like a great conversationalist? Is she funny, intelligent, I guess, caring? So what are the things that makes a woman a catch for a male?
Well, I think that's actually what you're reading is one of my questionnaires for my clients, is that it's called the Wonderful Weird Me exercise. Basically looks at what makes you a catch, what makes you, really worthy of being in a relationship, but also what makes you unique, what makes you different, what's your superpower, what makes you special. And it's centered around the idea of the movie When Harry Met Sally, because Sally was a very unique woman when she ordered food. And in fact, she was kind of neurotic, and it would take her forever to order. And at the end of the movie, when Harry says, I love it that it takes you an hour and a half to order a ham sandwich, what this really is real love is more about loving those things you don't like in a person versus those things you do.
That's a great point. And I think even talking about it as a package deal, you say when you buy something, you buy the whole package. So maybe they leave the toothpaste cap off, or they have other little habits, but you accept all that as part of the love.
It's all about acceptance, because if you don't accept someone for who they are, then you're going to be constantly butting up against those things that you don't like. So you either find a way to make a change or you accept it, because otherwise it's an exercise in futility, beating your head, up against the wall, hoping someone else will change just because they love you.
Definitely. And, in the books I've written, Love Types and Guy Types, we talk about the romantic networking, which is basically finding your true strength. Maybe you're a meaning seeker and you love psychology, philosophy, and the arts, and maybe get involved in groups like that. And then we have people that are maybe very spontaneous, and some are very structured, and they have different styles. But if they can embrace each other and respect each other, that can make a big difference in relationships. And I think that's what you're talking about. And the other idea is you also talk about the law of attraction like a mantra. Do you want people to repeat to themselves, or do they need to put photos on the wall of their ideal partner, or how do you do that?
Well, in this aspect of my work, one of the things I do is help a woman really get crystal clear on what they want to feel in relationship. And so if you can put those feelings down on paper, if you will, and start to embody what you want to feel in a relationship, the universal law of energy will start to bring that more into your life.
That makes sense. So you start to attract what you intentionally want in your head.
Exactly.
You imagine that. And then I think you also have a nice phrase here. You say, improve your GPS, which I thought was like finding stuff, but you say it's a guy picking system.
Yeah.
So, so you're pretty clever. You must have been in advertising before or something.
No, I work with a copywriter, so.
So what does that mean, guy picking? Is that where we're talking about, like, certain kind of clues that a woman should look for in a guy?
I think it's important to really get a sense of a person's lifestyle habits, their emotional habits, their personality habits. And so the guy picking system is really to help a woman get more clear on who's really compatible with her, as well as recognizing the greatest challenge in relationship is mostly our childhood wounds. So in that particular exercise, I help a client really identify someone's wounds and ask themselves, do I really want to get into a relationship with somebody who hasn't done the inner work to heal, whether it's childhood wounds and or adult wounds? Because we are, earlier you said the word masks. I don't believe it's a mask as if it's an intentional. I believe most people haven't recognized their wounds, and therefore they haven't been able to peel the onion to what's really getting on inside of them, and that's blocking them from love, whether it's a man or a woman. So I don't believe in the word masks because that feels kind of intentional. I think it's unintentional in most cases.
That's possible, but there is a camouflage that people, they try to impress other singles by putting up a persona, let's say. And but then later on, when the persona finishes, maybe they're introverted, but they go out a lot and socialize in the beginning of the dating. But then later on, when they get married, they want to stay home. And the other person says, you're a couch potato. You just want to stay home. So that's part of being honest with each other.
Yeah, and I think Chris Rock says it best. He says, oftentimes in the early stages of dating, we are the ambassador of our best selves. And I love that phraseology. And it's natural. You want to put your best self forward. Yes. I'm all about a completely different way of approaching it. Be authentic. You know what? Start off with your flaws. And then the person who doesn't run away, is probably worth sticking around with.
Okay. So you come in a little bit messy or whatever, disorganized, and you spill stuff on the floor. And that's
authentic. That's authentic. Be transparent, but it takes a certain level of recognizing what that might be. So if you don't know what they are, you can't do it.
That makes sense. All right, let's show up an hour late to the date, and then and we say we got lost or something, right? So that if we're spontaneous.
Well, you see, now that's being disingenuous. Just owning it. But that's also that's a reflection of someone's values. Mm-hmm. If you have a date and you're supposed to be there at 6:30, then that's punctuality is a value. If you don't value punctuality, and you're like, my brother doesn't value punctuality. He's always late. And I'm completely the opposite. We probably wouldn't be good mates. I mean, I'm not going to date my brother, but my point is,
of course.
I'm just saying.
So you're talking about in the Myers-Briggs, we call it the structure versus the spontaneous personality. The one person's always late, one's on time. One's messy, one's disorganized, but also they can offer value to each other. The spontaneous person is more fun-loving and flexible, and the other person is more organized and on time. So sometimes complementary roles can work. But again, I think, Jonathan, you're saying you have to respect each other's style. You have to appreciate what they bring to the relationship. Ultimately.
But I will say this. I agree with you that your styles might be different, but what's hugely important is you share the same values. Yes. Because two people, if you don't... Now, I'm saying if you have kind of the far end of spectrum of the values. So, politics and religion is a perfect place to look at this. Someone who's at the far left in their politics and someone who's at the far right of their politics or they're far left in their religion or far right, they probably don't share the same values. And that's probably going to end up being very problematic in relationship.
That makes sense.
So alignment has far greater success than the idea of opposites attract.
Yeah, that's true. Research does show that similarities are long-term more successful. Now, the other idea, Jonathan, is this idea of the disappearing man. And nowadays with dating, I think there's a new term called ghosting, where I guess people disappear after initial contact and they don't return phone calls or text. So this can be a big problem. And so you talk about why men pull away and how to kind of see if he's a flight risk. So tell us a little bit about that. How do we determine the flight risk in a dating partner?
Well, that's a great question. And, the idea of ghosting, let me just bring that up, is got multiple different ways of looking at it. If someone's been in an entrenched relationship where they've been intimate a number of times and someone completely disappears, I think that's a disingenuous act. If, let's say, you just started communicating on a dating app and the person doesn't plan a date with you or goes out on one date and never calls you back, that's not ghosting. That's just, I'm not that into you.
Right. But ghosting is more like if you're with them for a while and then they disappear. Is what you're saying.
They disappear. Now, I'm all about asking, what's that person's good reason? Yes. And in other words, most people react in those types of ways based on some sort of fear, either the fear of rejection or there's some other fear going on. So fear of hurting someone's feelings. And so the idea of ghosting oftentimes is usually because they fear some aspect in their life. Most of it is usually based on hurting someone's feelings. And they don't realize by ghosting, they're actually doing what they hope not to do. Or they fear having the uncomfortable conversation of basically saying, I'm just not that into you anymore. Here's the thing. We can condemn that person and then we could even go a step further, blame that person. And then we could go a step further and be a victim of this incident, which doesn't serve you. And then we could go on social media talking about how you just got ghosted, which then you're going to get all this validation and sympathy, which is going to make you feel good, but in a very temporary way. And it's the most unhealthy way to feel good. We are living in a world of what I call victim validation syndrome, where people have felt hurt over something and they need to get sympathy from everyone else for what happened.
So let's say that for a woman, you talk about what does she do to push him away? So what may a female or a woman do that's pushing men away?
I think I don't think anyone does anything intentionally, but they might unintentionally not recognize that if one has needy behavior, in other words, I need you to like me to feel loved, that could be overwhelming to a man. Probably one of the most predominant things that pushes someone away. I think the top things are being criticizing, being defensive with someone, stonewalling them, meaning kind of being that laid back approach can turn a man away.
How about being too touchy-feely or saying I love you too much or let's get married in 3 months kind of thing?
I think when you're misaligned, when two people are misaligned, you start butting up against each other because you're expecting something from someone because you have an unmet need going on in many cases.
I see. So there can be issues that they don't even realize, maybe neediness, or you mentioned criticism. And how about the idea of maybe even a possessiveness, like you have to text me all the time or, kind of like that kind of thing?
Sadly, that's one of the things I see frequently, this idea of mistrust. Well, there's possessiveness, which oftentimes comes from a place of an insecurity within themselves. And there is mistrust going on, which tends to be a reflection of some childhood wound that happened makes someone to be, mistrusting.
Yeah, I think Hendricks talks about the imago, where we often pick sometimes partners that are similar to our parents. For example, very cold and critical parent, we might pick someone similar. We're kind of like used to that kind of negative criticism. Yes. And it's an unconscious aspect, but I think the wounds is an important idea. Now, Jonathan, this is really fascinating stuff. I mean, we're really helping, I think, a lot of women, and I think even men. We have male listeners, too, that can look at the other side. And, being a guy spy actually is a cool way, I guess, for men to understand women as well, to understand both sides of it. And you do talk about unlocking the male mind.
Yes.
And looking for commitment, love, and sex. And you have a lot of interesting things here. So you ask one question, how long should I wait for a guy to commit? So what is the answer to that question? Is there an answer, or is that something that we need to think about?
But, I want to kind of rethink that question for a moment, because I think it really starts with, why not asking yourself, why would I want to commit to this person? Mm-hmm. Ask yourself that question first. And if you have a clear-cut answer, then, because here's the thing, and Alex, I just want to share something with you.
Sure.
One of the common things that happens in my coaching practice is a woman's been dating a guy for 4 or 5 months,
Yes.
and she calls me up and says, I want more commitment with the guy.
Right.
And I'm like, really? Great. What does that look like? Well, Jonathan, I just want more commitment from him. I'm like, great. What does that look like? But I want more commitment from him. I'm like, great. What does that look like? But I need more commitment from him. If you can't answer what that looks like and what it means, then he has no clue. So, I'm all about being kind of baseline at this. I would like to spend 3 or 4 days and nights a week together doing shared activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, being in a space of teamwork with one another, helping each other out. At least have an idea of what it looks like, what commitment looks like for you versus the word itself.
That's a good point. And also you talk about you want him to be grounded in his own life. So I think you're talking about career-wise or his purpose in life. And then you also talk about 2 to 3 years as an average courtship. What do you think about those ideas?
Well, I've actually rethought that quite a bit.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
Yeah, since writing that. And
Yes.
I believe for those of us in our midlife, I think that's an old paradigm. And I believe that it shouldn't take more than 6 months for 2 people to know whether or not they want to go down this path. Now, to conscious people,
Yes.
unconscious people, a lot of times will never get there. It kind of goes back to that saying is, what does commitment look like for you? I think it's highly important early on to have real conversations about what commitment means to you and what your long-term desires are. And you shouldn't wait much past the 6-month mark to have those deeper conversations. And if it takes 2 or 3 years to get to fully commitment, fully partnership, that's okay. I think you have to have that conversation somewhere between the 3rd and 6-month mark. And let me tell you why. If it scares someone away, great. Let them run away. Let them go. Because this isn't game playing anymore. This isn't, wiffle ball. Because the investment of someone's heart, and I got to tell you, women invest their heart with a lot of men who are kind of lackadaisical with this process. And I think that's unhealthy for both of them.
Now, what if the man...
I want to encourage
Yes.
people to be more intentional with this process and not kind of cavalier.
Right. Now, Jonathan, what if, I think you mentioned this, in the midlife time, a male may say, well, I'm switching careers. I'm going to be a juggler or something, or get into insurance sales after being a teacher or something. And, they're still like developing who they are career-wise, and they're not really ready yet. Is that something that she should say, well, okay, let me wait until he finds his career path? Or should she want to say, I want to get committed now?
It's interesting. A long time ago, there was a story. I remember when men wanted to become doctors, and it was the woman who did all the work while he was pursuing his, this is back in the 60s. I remember a story like this. But you know what? I've got your back. What does that really mean? I've got your back. If 2 people genuinely love each other, then you're going to support each other through the process, whether he's making a change in his life or you're making a change in your life. And if you're an individual that you're not ready for that level of commitment, then don't seek that level of commitment. I'm a big proponent of partnership and choosing that path very early on. Look back in my parents' era, people got married in less than 6 to 8 weeks of knowing one another, and they made full commitment to one another. Dating today is just a way of getting laid and having some friends, having companionship. And that's what most dating and relationships are today. I want to encourage people to, and I'm not encouraging marriage. I'm encouraging partnership. And be in a space where you're ready for partnership. And if you're not, then have a companionship-based relationship and then take it wherever it goes. But if it doesn't work out, don't cry over spilt milk either.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, you talk about the psychological triggers to commit. So let's say a woman is out there in the dating world, online or offline, and she's looking, how do I know this guy is ready to commit? And I think you talk about we conversations where they talk about the partnership. So what are some of the cues or clues where this man is emotionally ready to commit?
It starts by getting a sense of his past history. So, first off, you kind of have to see where someone came from and whether, how their divorce was. So for example, And what you're really looking for is victim consciousness or victor consciousness. So let's say this man is divorced and all he does is, let me backtrack, or let me keep going. All he does is complain about his ex-wife and it was all her fault. Well, he's being a victim and he's taking no personal responsibility for his choices. One of the fastest ways to recognize a person's emotional health is, do they take personal responsibility for their choices, and do their actions match their words, and do they have a clear sense of where they're going in their life? You don't have to know where you're going, but at least a clear sense of intention. That's the mark of someone who's emotionally mature. People that are kind of, lackadaisical about their direction, they don't take personal responsibility for their choices, and their actions don't match those words. It's fairly easy to spot those people within the first 30 or 60 days if you're paying attention for it.
That makes sense. Now, Jonathan, women often ask this question, what do men want? And men ask the same question about women. And you even talk about what men find sexy in a woman or in a relationship. So what is it that men find sexy in a woman?
I think it's pretty universal that confidence is very sexy. Mm-hmm. A sense of confidence. And what that really means is a sense of knowing thyself. Do I know myself? That is very attractive. Now, you have to be careful because we've got to go back to that idea of ambassador of my best self.
Yes.
When you are confident, you don't ever have to tell someone how great you are. If you have to tell, like I heard one man telling a client of mine, I've got Midwestern values, so that makes me really good in relationship. Mm-hmm. The fact that he said it is a clear sign he's not, because if you have to tell someone it, you're not.
Right, because some of those so-called seduction courses teach men how to be cocky and how to, put on a persona of confidence. Yeah. And you're saying that's not important to be confident in dating for a male?
No, that's not what I said. You don't have to tell people.
So you show it.
Confidence is an inner strength of being happy with who you are already.
Yes.
And so you don't need to tell anyone that. That's a sign of weakness.
Yes, definitely. Now, the other thing is, let's say that, Jonathan, we're working hard, we find a great partner, male or female, and we have a great relationship, but that's only half of it. How do we keep the love alive and keep it going? And you talk about the 3 A's: attention, affection, and acceptance. So tell us about the 3 A's.
Yes, I learned that from Dr. Sherry Myers. She coined it in her book, interesting enough, called Chatting or Cheating.
Yes.
But the 3 A's: attention, affection, and appreciation.
Yes.
Obviously, attention. That means, hey, I'm paying. I'm here. Okay. Attention. Affection. Touch. Feel. Spending touch.
Yes.
Is hugely important on a daily basis. And appreciation. Gratitude is one of the fastest ways to love that's humanly possible.
Right.
So when you express appreciation for your partner on a daily basis, and it requires being intentional about this. And I'm a big proponent of what I call co-creating. In other words, being in a relationship with someone where you're both intentional. You recognize that you're going to have to give the 3 A's, the multivitamin, on a regular basis if you want something healthy. If you want to be, I'll trust that it's going to work out on its own, it's most likely not. You have to be intentional.
Exactly. So basically, I think you said things like give them 3 kisses and look them in the eye, and also say 5 things you like about them on a daily basis. Is that too much work for people? Do you think they'll say that?
Both people should do that equally. Absolutely. I'm going to share a quick story. So I was in a significant relationship some years back.
Yes.
And coincidentally, we were both doing a speaking gig together because the topic was called We Need to Talk.
Yes.
But the night before, we got into a major fight over something trivial. Right. And it was one of those, we were yelling back and forth. I was literally watching myself in shock how we were yelling at each other.
Yes.
And in that moment, I stopped and I just said, you know what I'm most grateful for about you? Mm-hmm. And I listed the 5, just right off the top of my head, 5 things.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing, she was quiet. The second thing, she was quiet. By the third one, I could feel her armor coming down. And the fourth one, And then when I said the fifth one, she was more receptive. And I said, I invite you to share the same. By the time she shared what she was most grateful for about me, we could come back to a civilized conversation.
Oh, that's pretty good. And the fact that both of you like to argue, that could be a positive, right? Because you get things out as well.
Well, there was something under the rug that needed to be discussed.
Yes.
And we were both on the opposite ends of the field. By being in gratitude, we could come to the middle ground and say, okay, let's have a real conversation. And ironically enough, and by the way, she was ready to get on a plane to leave. We were we were speaking at an event.
My goodness.
That ended up being the topic of conversation. So on some universal plane, that was meant to happen.
I see. Now, I think you mentioned you're in a relationship now with a therapist or someone that you're in love with.
Actually, well, that relationship ended a year ago. We couldn't get to partnership, which was fine. We had a very conscious uncoupling. We recognized that we couldn't get to that path. And that's actually one of the impetus for me to really start shifting my practice more in the concept of partnership.
I like that. Now, one thing, this has been really fascinating today. I really am happy that you're able to help us with all these ideas, especially with the idea of finding love. But I want to switch something to a little more personal topic. It's kind of difficult maybe to talk about, but you mentioned about your son dying recently.
Yeah.
And how you talk about love as the solution to fear. Can you tell us a little bit about that in a universal way?
Yeah. So 3 weeks ago today, my son passed away in his sleep.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And thank you. And what's so fascinating to me on multiple levels is that I've accepted it. I'm in a state of peace over it. And I'm choosing, not to think about the fact that I won't hug him again. I'm not thinking about having long conversations. I'm not thinking about laughing with him. I'm not thinking of the jokes. I'm not thinking of what I'm going to miss out. What I'm focusing on is what I'm most grateful for the time we had together, and choosing love over pain.
Yes.
And I truly believe that can be a conscious choice. And the way I look at it, Alex, is that Connor's sleeping. Yes. He's just in a very long sleep. My last visual image of him was on the floor in his bedroom, and it looked like he was just in a peaceful sleep. And when my boys were younger, I used to watch them sleep. I loved watching them sleep.
Yes.
And so I'm just like, he's sleeping right now. He's in a great place. He's happy. And what's fascinating is his nickname was Salty.
Salty.
And I'm like daily, like literally it feels like daily. Like yesterday I was on a dating site looking at a profile, and her name, the tagline was Sweet and Salty. The day before that I saw a t-shirt that said Stay Salty. I saw a bulletin board that said the salt of the earth. I mean, he's speaking to me every day, and he doesn't want me to be in pain. He wants me to choose love. So I do him a disservice by suffering over his loss.
It's beautiful.
I do him a disservice.
Yes. My dad actually passed away a few years ago, and we were very close. So I understand where you're saying that the love is the essence of the person that stays after they're no longer here. And that always stays with you. That's the essence. And that's the beauty part. So if you can bring that into relationships, how do we turn fear and deprivation or futility into love mentally for a lot of the people? A lot of single people are grieving that they don't find their soulmate. Even married people are grieving that they're in bad marriages or relationships. So how do we turn that fear and deprivation into love mentally? So,
since you brought up my son, I've been thinking about this quite a bit today.
Yes.
And my son, I didn't need him to love me to feel love. I didn't need, and so I've been exploring this. I never needed him to love me to feel love. Yes. And a lot of times we're always like, pushing our children to say the words. And with Connor, he wasn't he wasn't communicative in that way. He showed, I didn't need him to love me. And it's because in the last couple years, I've been doing a deep dive into self-love. And self-love is the antidote to needing to feel loved by someone else for your happiness. And because I didn't need him to love me, we had an amazing relationship together. We would just get together and have these deep, rich conversations. And
Yes.
for the record, my son believed we lived in the Matrix. I mean, he was 19 years old,
Okay.
and he believed this was all a dream anyway.
Okay.
So he just proved it to me 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. What I talk about is love without expectation, and basically love is an internal force that you have inside, and by giving it outwardly, you grow as a human, but also you connect with others in a natural way. I think that's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And so it's kind of like the idea of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first when you're on the airplane, if you're traveling with small children. It's the same thing. Start by filling one's love cup. Now, a lot of people don't know what that looks like. So it might mean meditating in the morning. It might be spending time with exercise. It might be spending time with family and friends.
Right.
It's about filling what brings you joy outside of needing someone else to do it for you.
Yes, a spiritual practice or mindfulness and things like that, and also giving to others, because when you give, that love increases, and again, the gratitude feeling is very powerful. So, Jonathan, it's really wonderful. You seem like a kind of a spiritual guy, and you're, I think, a loving person, and you really want to help others and find that love. And it's been a wonderful experience having you here today. The time has gone by very fast, and as a guest lecturer, everyone's taking notes.
Yeah.
So, right, Reggie, our producer, taking note. So, Jonathan, where can people learn more about you and some of your things that you have going on that you're excited about? Maybe your website and that kind of thing.
Well, first, I want to thank you so much. You're a great interviewer, by the way. So I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to share to your community.
Yes.
And I don't know if you'll have a link near the podcast or whatever, but my website is Jonathon Aslay, ASLAY.com. And you can join my email community. You can find me on social media in a variety of different ways. My specialty is helping women develop partnership with men. And without this, when you understand what that looks like for you, it's a lot easier to find.
Exactly. Now, do you do any workshops or seminars, Jonathan, or any talks?
I have yes, I do. In fact, in Los Angeles, I'll be doing one on August 13th, and every second Monday of the month at the 4 Point Sheraton in Culver City. It's called Real Relationship Talks, where we're going to talk about the real stuff behind relationship and not the surface kind of stuff.
That's pretty good.
About what to, remember we talked about the ambassador of your best self?
Yes.
We're going underneath that mask, as you say.
Perfect.
To get behind what it takes to create a really healthy.
Yeah, I used to work with Dr. Pat Allen. I don't know if you've heard of her. She used to do a lot of talks in LA. But
I'm very familiar with Dr. Pat.
Yeah, but maybe you and I can collaborate in the future. We can perhaps put on something interesting for people and seminars and the relationships. So this has been Love University. If you have any questions or comments for today's show, please email us at lovetype4u@aol.com. That's LOVETYPE, the number 4, letter U at AOL.com. You can visit our website at loveuniversity.love. Call us at 310-226-8090. And again, the message, as always, is loving yourself, others, and a higher nature. And I think, Jonathan, we covered all three today in a very fascinating way. And it's been a pleasure to have you on. We'll see you again. We'll have you back on and do something part 2, perhaps.
I would love that. Thank you.
And the students now, put away your notepads, your pens, your pencils, your iPads, and your phones. Love University is now dismissed.